Hey everybody, if we don't already know each other, I'm Matt Stempeck. I'm the founder of the Civic Tech Field Guide. And if you've been following our newsletter, you'll know we're really excited about what AI coding is making possible, myself included, versus where I was a year ago. But we're also skeptical of some of what we're seeing, where some of the projects are just kind of duplicating existing 15 years of civic tech without changing them in any way. So, like, explaining legislation or find who represents you, those are great websites to have. But in terms of like having impact and reaching more users than the predecessors of those versions, we want to like encourage experimentation and trying new things. So one area where I'm really optimistic about vibe coding, AI coding, is people in existing contexts, whether that's city government or campaigns or a newspaper office, that suddenly have a lot of the capabilities that only a full stack developer had like a year ago or 2 years ago. Um, People are building really neat things, even just little utilities that solve their own pain points that I think a lot of us could benefit from. And also, basically, we're excited to explore what that means for the field. But also, the point of this event is just kind of fun, informal show and tell format because also, a lot of us are struggling to like share our projects with people who care. Reddit is awash with lots of people's side projects. So we wanted to create a space where we can show off what we're building with some of the best we're seeing, and then part of it is also just sharing how you're building stuff. So I know I benefit every time I talk to people that are way more advanced than me on what they're using to AI code and how they're using it. So we're gonna try to include that as part of the format too. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And I just want to first introduce for the first time, in person, Daniel Makasak. So welcome, Daniel. He's our new manager for the Civic Tech Field Guide. And he's already contributing, making it better in so many ways. But Daniel's gonna continue hosting this event and introduce Nathan as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Daniel.
Thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, no, really, really excited for this little event. Similar kind of internal battle going on for me, as I'm sure there is for a number of us in the space around like the utility of AI versus ethics and various other things like the way in which we use it. But that kind of makes me even more excited for this because it's an example of someone connecting the technology directly to like real human data and making things better, hopefully. So that's why we've got Nathan here today. Nathan is, from what I understand, an old horse in the New York civic tech community and has been around for a while and has been doing a lot of really amazing things. And today he's going to be talking about Civic AI Tools, which, if you've seen our pitch for the event, is sort of connecting a whole bunch of that open civic data to the AI ecosystem. So not only really excited to hear him talk about what he's built, but also in particular how he's built it, because one of the values of this event is to help us all get better at doing some of the things and push this stuff in the right direction. So um, just a couple of notes before I again punt things over to Nathan himself. We are going to have mute on generally throughout the event, but there will be a Q&A at the end. So what I'll be doing while Nathan's talking is going through and looking at hopefully a whole bunch of questions that like really interesting questions that you guys are writing down throughout the presentation. And then at the end, I'll name people directly and put the questions to Nathan and he can answer them. So that will be about the last 10, 15 minutes of the show. So without further ado, Nathan, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, thanks for that introduction and thanks for inviting me here to be the inaugural guinea pig of this format. I think it's such like, there's already been a great introduction about the term. It's a very divisive term. Um, I like embracing it because I've never been more excited to build things before. And I'm somebody who had a little bit of background of building things. But I've been in the civic tech space for 15 years or longer, and I'm always building side projects. And so the floor of what I've been able to build with AI Code Assist has just kind of risen. And the project that I'm here to talk about is this Civic AI Tools project, which really just started as a weekend project. that I was, nights and weekends, I was experimenting with, I've been experimenting with AI since since ChatGPT 3.5 and like just using it every day and kind of been, enamored with the possibility of what it could do, but also wanting to put it towards civic uses. I have a long interest in open data in New York City and done some experiments. And I did an experiment with kind of trying to create a way that AI can interact with open data portals. And it got a lot of attention quickly. And so I've been developing this project. Um, and I'm really excited to kind of like give a demo of the project, but then I'm going to spend most of my time talking about how I built it with the AI code assist tools. I'm on a new laptop here, so it's going to be hard for me to monitor chat, but I do have a interactive kind of presentation that I vibe coded last night. And if you want to, follow along, you can, I put the link in the chat. And I will go through this presentation. There's more content on here than I can cover. But either Matt or Daniel, if there's interest in the chat on a particular area as I'm talking, feel free to interrupt me and I can kind of direct the presentation to another area. Okay, so I think I've preambled long enough. So it's Civic AI Tools. We're going to talk about how I kind of like ship this project. There's 5 repos, and I have 8 different kinds of chats and an orchestration cockpit that I use. And this is all kind of like developed organically, as I'm sure everyone here is developing their own way. I don't say this is the only way that you could work, but I think there are a lot of general principles that people can adopt to their own kind of workflows. So first, let me just tell a little bit more about what Civic AI Tools is. You can ask real questions and then get information back. And then the analysis that you get back can be verified. The method that that the AI used to create the analysis can be verified. So there is a demonstration website, an MCP server, a standards website, and then a standalone verify package that other people can implement. So the 2 main web properties are sort of like Civic AI Tools, and then the new one, this type standards. But I'll just do a quick demo here. Can everyone see the Civic AI Tools? Did it switch? Am I sharing my screen properly?
Would it be possible to change the display for viewers so that the presentation is a little bigger? Right now, y'all are equal in presentation. Alternatively, if that's a me thing, I'll just try to swap it myself.
No, I was going to ask
No,
the same.
I see the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call. Is Matt or Daniel, are you able to do that?
Yes, I just tried and it doesn't seem to be working. Sorry. 1 second.
Well, I think
I'm
it's
not-
Nathan, are you sharing your own video on your screen? Like it seems like the screen
maybe.
share includes your video versus like just the window of your presentation. So I think there's actually 2 video feeds of you. There's one in the Zoom where you're a participant, and there's your screen sharing.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Content only. I think that is mine. Let me
There
see.
you go.
All
Good
right.
work.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Problem solved, everybody.
Vibe
Takes a
coding all we
village.
want. We still got to figure out Zoom.
Yeah. There, we're gonna figure out AGI before we figure out AV. Yeah. Okay. So here is the website, and so you can ask a question. So we can do noise. My favorite one to do for test: noise trends in New York City last week. And this shows you, without a data tool, how AI answers. It doesn't have information, it's training data. But if you do have a data tool, this MCP, you can get real information from an open data portal like New York City's open data portal, or this also connects to any open data portal that runs on Socrata. And there's a couple other data sources, including US Census data. So it gives you an answer that's grounded in real data. And this website is based, like has principles of progressive disclosure, shows you what queries it's making. In the end, I didn't sign in. If you sign into the website, I'll have to do that friend again. Let's use this. You can publish as evidence. And I want to show this really quickly so that you kind of get an idea of what this project is. Maybe some of you have played around with this website, but for those of you who haven't, the idea is just making AI-assisted analysis more transparent and reproducible. And so you get the information about exactly what it did, but then we can publish this as an evidence page. And the evidence page kind of shows you the initial prompt, the system prompts, the model card information, as well as a Python notebook that gives it runs a deterministic code that gives you an answer and that's where it becomes reproducible. And other people can add attestations if an expert could review this analysis and say, did you forget to do something like normalize the analysis? And then critically, everything that's captured here is put into an envelope that's cryptographically signed that can be verified by a third party. And so if you click on it's verified by type standards. If we click here, we can go to an independent website. Here's the URL that we just created, and it's verifying that there was a known publisher, that the envelope was signed, who it was signed by, and what key signed it, when it was signed, and all of so that you can tell exactly that the production of this artifact was what it says it was. So in a nutshell, that's the project. Typestandards.org is the standard that Civic AI Tools is an example reference implementation of this standard for the civic space. So it's basically producing analysis that don't ask for your trust based, and it's creating this evidence package that has a provenance graph, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all a nights and weekend project, 5 to 10 hours a week, one person, kind of 5 repos. How did I create this over the past year or so? So let's get into that. I kind of evolved this process of having different types of chats, and I developed a chat taxonomy where some things I'm having strategic conversations, and I might do this in the web browser of Claude. I'm using Claude, but I have used ChatGPT and Gemini before. I've switched around. I've been using Claude for a while, so you're going to see references to Claude here, but none of this is kind of specific to one platform. So there's a strategic chat, there's kind of planning chats, but then when I'm getting into doing actual coding, I'm going into Claude Code, and the main 2 types of chats that I'm using are an orchestration chat and an implementation chat. And orchestration chat is sort of like designing the briefs. So I might describe a feature that I want. I often will use type to text, describe a feature, and have an orchestration chat format my rambling into a design brief. And then I will paste that design brief over into an implementation chat. Each of these sort of runs has access to different parts of the project. I won't go into more than that, except that there's also a separate repo that I maintain for sort of external communications work that I'm working with chatbots. So moving ahead though, that's the general kind of framework. And again, I can get into any more of these. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these a little bit quickly, but we can go into detail in some of these other ones, depending on interest. But I want to kind of get at sort of what happens when you open up a chat instance. And I realize that some people on this call might know some of this and some people might not, but I think that I'm trying to capture what I'm doing because it is it feels it's like a mystery. How do you figure out how other people are building complex things with AI code assist tools? And so I put a lot of work into building up the system prompt level. And the system prompt level, or the config level, includes this file that's called claude.md. In other platforms, it might be named something different, but that's a markdown file, a text file that loads with in the beginning of when you're loading a code assist session. And so it has your general instructions. You can get a tool to kind of generate that for you. You can write it yourself. You can evolve it over time. One thing that I like to do in those files is reference other files. So in your claude.md, you might say, if you want to do any UX design work, reference my uxdesign.md file. There's lots of ways to structure this. I don't think there's one way that's necessarily better than another. And it can get really confusing or overwhelming to try to get the perfect system. And the key is that you can evolve this over time. As these systems have evolved, they keep the providers of these systems keep adding new ways to get the AI to use your system prompts. So there are things that are called project-based memories. There are config permissions that can be loaded. You can have slash commands or hooks, or starter prompts can kind of declare, I am this type of chat. And so you can still do the sort of like prompt some of this in the prompting. All of this is to say that it is complicated, but it is worth it to think through how you want the chats to work for you and to write it down. It won't do anything unless you've written it down. And the last kind of thing I want to highlight here is that, like, I've developed this practice of having the chats write the planning and orchestration chats write what they do to a log that's persistent. And the log is referenced in the claude.md document that says whenever you make a decision, whenever you do something, add an entry to the log. So how this looks, or one key point, is that, like, all of those are files that are persistent in a repo that lives on my local computer and then gets synced to a remote repo on GitHub. Nothing that's happening in the chats is permanent. But I'm telling the chats to save to files that then get synced over to GitHub. So I have version control protection for everything that I save as a file. And so how this works is I will start a planning chat. I'll talk about a feature. I'll have the planning chat say, when I'm going back and forth with the planning chat, and I say, okay, this is a good plan. Give me a starter prompt for an orchestration chat. The orchestration chat then takes the general plan and translates it into design briefs or implementation briefs. The implementation briefs are then sent to an implementation chat. The implementation chat creates things, and then when it's done, it creates a pull request. And that pull request is then sent back to the orchestration chat to evaluate, and then I approve that, or I review it and then approve it. So I'll get into, like, going through a specific, like, change that I recently did, like, step by step. But one thing I want to kind of pause on here is security. So this is something that you've seen, like, people, like, they vibe code something and it has security vulnerabilities in it, or they've put their, like, secret keys in a public repo. So it is important to learn this, and you can learn it the hard way or the easy way. And the easy way is to learn from other people who have made these mistakes before you have. So I think that it's like there's a lot of concepts that you can learn over time, but some of the ones that I think are important is, like, thinking about environmental variables. And that's where, like, these are the keys. These are the things that connect you to access to accounts that can touch your databases or your bank accounts. And so you really want to make sure that those are secure. One thing is like understanding like how GitHub works. Like if you put something in a public repo, that's public. So you don't want to have anything that's sensitive on those repos. Git ignoring is a good first step, but that's not enough. Because with AI code assist tools, by default, they can look at any file on your machine, and they might ask you for permission, but it's very easy to like sort of like get into a pattern of just clicking yes and not realizing that, oh, oops, it just asked me for permission to like look at an environmental variable. So the principle is like defense in depth. So you have different layers. And so all of these I've built up over time. And so there are things like, if anything is shaped like a secret, you can have a config file that is a hook that says, anything that has a .env in it, block that from happening. Don't let that command run. You can do a sandbox, which is like a fence around certain types of commands. Really important. I wish I had learned this earlier, but now I'm like a really big adherent to using like a password manager that can access a command line interface. And so when I'm developing in Claude Code, all of my secrets are stored on my 1Password account. And when I need an environmental variable to work with, I can get a reference to that so that the secret is never saved to disk. If you save something to disk, you might put it in git ignore, but a goal-oriented system might figure out a way to write a Python script that gets a secret printed to a different file that it has access to. That has happened to me. So there's, I just wanted to pause on this for a minute. I think that there's like one of the criticisms of vibe coding is that it can create these insecure things. These are problems that there are some specific problems with vibe coding, but learning these things over time is important. Okay, so let me quickly go through one change. So here, the first step is like an orchestration chat is booted up. So that's in terminal. I'm typing in Claude and terminal is starting the Claude software. When it does that, it's loading my claude.md instructions and the memory config files. And so it's doing those actions. Then I am drafting like having a conversation, putting it into orchestration chat, and like I might ask something, turn the plan into a paste-ready implementation brief, and then it will create that. I will send that. I will, go back and forth. I will inspect it, and then when it looks good to me, I'll take that and shift it into an implementation plan. In this case, I might have two different branches going, one for each repo, and at the end, the output produced by the implementation will be a PR request. I thought I had some. Where is it? I think it's in the next one. Okay, so yeah, the PR is generated by the implementation chat, and then I will copy the URL of the PR and like whatever summary the implementation chat gave me back into the orchestration chat. And I will say like, here's the report back, verify it against the actual diff in GitHub, and then tell me whether it's ready to merge. And so it will go through like sometimes write unit test, evaluate this. Sometimes it will write like it will like set up a test environment. And depending on what it is, I might review it at different fidelity. So like maybe I'll review it in a preview environment. Maybe I will just look at the PR request myself or look at the diff or read a file. So that all depends. And then once I'm satisfied, I'll write, it's approved. Here's what we're doing. And I will either manually do the merge myself or ask the the implementation chat or the orchestration chat to do that. And then the orchestration chat will do a series of like smoke tests on the live production. The production in my setup is auto deployed when something goes into main, into the main branch of the GitHub repo. And to close it out, then the orchestration chat will kind of close the loop and add a new log into the ledger, and then I'll close out the chats. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of a version of like a workflow that I've been using for a few months. It's changed a little bit here and there with like as different features and things get added. But that is the workflow that I use. A couple last things I want to talk about is like, that's how I build this, but sort of like when I'm deciding what I'm building, I developed this principle, in chat with an LLM. Like I was talking about like trying to prioritize like what features I should build, and I remembered this project called Project Xanadu, and it just felt like this really evocative name because I'm like, this project started out as like a simple literacy around AI data, and now it's talking about verifying truth and cryptographic envelopes. And like, am I building something that is this like complicated, unfinished feature design, ambitious project that nobody's actually using? So I tried to imbue this kind of principle that is included in my kind of system prompts, or referenced in my system prompts, called the Xanadu doctrine, which is, don't build anything that people don't want, which is not that people don't need, that people aren't asking for, which is not a new concept in software development and in the civic space in particular. Like, I think that's something to pause on for a second, is when you're building something, make sure that you're actually thinking about who needs this and do you know they actually need it. So that's a general principle. How I kind of elaborated it a little bit was thinking about, if something is speculative, I can kind of like create a open question. But if somebody is interested in that, then it like, don't promote it into actually designing a spec for that until there's a real world adopter with a concrete need identified. And then don't actually build it until I know that they actually need it. And don't make it required for adopters of the standard until I real. So it's just like at each one of these gates, like kind of like mentally thinking that through. So there's a page here where you can kind of like look at some examples, like, is a funder asked you whether you support this, that would pass. It passes the, and here's some examples of like actual things where I took this principle through. Yeah. Okay. Adopter is blocked from publishing without the change. Oh, yeah, this is actually testing it. Okay. An adopter is blocked from publishing without the change. I'm going to test myself here. Yes, it passes the gate. So you can go through that and look through that. I feel like I'm going a little bit too fast. I thought I was going to go slower, but this site the link that I sent here, like has this whole presentation, but there's a couple other things here, which if you want to look through, there's sort of like this project by the numbers, like it started in March when I was of last year, when I was exploring MCP. I forked a repo from Scott Robin, who is a longtime Civic Tech member in the Chicago area, one of the founders of a Shy Hack Night. And so I found his project on MCPs. I was reading about MCPs, and he had done an initial version, and I kind of adopted that and made it into a remote server. But then I kind of like didn't do anything with it for a while. But then in December of last year, Claude Opus 4.5 came out, and I started experimenting and building out this demo website. And so this is just a little visualization that I made last night of kind of like the project. There's another visualization about the stack. One of the things that I asked when I was preparing for this presentation was to think about this principle of progressive disclosure, designing for progressive disclosure on websites. And there's a lot of complicated concepts in AI, and defaulting to plain language when possible, but then if somebody wants to go deeper, adding ways for them to learn more about certain concepts is something that's in the kind of Civic AI tools kind of DNA. And it's this concept of progressive discovery. If you want to learn more about progressive discovery, there's another appendix about the concept of progressive discovery. And like thinking about like, it's like a design principle around like a chip or a label or a step name. It should be very like clear. You should be able to glance at it in 1 to 3 seconds. Hover is something that you can kind of like take in 3 to 10 seconds. And if you click, that's when somebody's kind of giving you an intention that they maybe will give you 30 seconds of their attention. So there's links here to the design principles documents that I built over time. So this links to my GitHub where these documents were developed. So like I really, as I work, I like to write everything down so that you can reference it later. So that's a constant part of my practice. Chat narration. Yeah, so this is about the progressive discovery, and there's a section here about the technology stack if you're interested as well. Yeah, and so that's kind of a quick overview of the process. I'm gonna pause here. I know I ended a little bit early than I thought, but
No, that's
I'm happy to kind of like go in any direction with the conversation, either on.
absolutely no problem, Nathan. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. That was really, really interesting. I just want to start because we've got a few questions from further back up the chat, sort of touching on all points of your presentation. I just wanted to address one thing just off the bat. Perhaps you could, because this is a concept that we only just recently came to contact with as well, and that is the MCPs, which are kind of core to what you're doing here. Perhaps you wouldn't mind just giving a bit of an explainer for everybody here, what an MCP is, what it does, and that kind of stuff, just to help contextualize things.
Yes, that is a good prompt. I have a good explainer on Civic AI Tools, on Civic AI Tools Learn. So I'll put this in the chat, but I'll give an explanation as well. Give me 1 second. So an MCP is a data tool that can help an AI figure out how to access data. And so a data can be a database or it can be an API. And so in this case, the open data portals all have APIs, which are application protocol interfaces. That's the old way for one piece of software to speak to another piece of software, but it's code, and LLMs speak in English. So an MCP is basically structured markdown files that tell it exactly how to interact with a data source like an API. And it's a standard that was first originated by Anthropic, but was later given to the Linux Foundation, who currently maintains it, that all of the major AI platforms have adopted. So all of the AI providers are what themselves are called a, what's it? I'm missing the language here. There's a server and there's a host. So the host, like it's baked into your AI tools. If something, an MCP follows this format, it can provide a tool that an AI can use to access data information, much like it would use like the web browser tool. This provides it a tool that can access data. So yeah, there's a little bit more information on this page here about that.
That's excellent. Thank you. And yeah, one of the if it, I guess as a sort of intro to MCPs and opening move, the first thing I discovered is that you can actually just, if you're using Claude, the app, for example, you can just go to settings and connectors and plug it in. It's actually
Yeah.
remarkably simple to set up, isn't it? So you can give it a URL. If it's a valid MCP server, it plugs in, and all of a sudden the tool that you're working with just has direct access to a whole bunch of extra data.
Yep.
So that's really, really cool. I'm going to go through some of the questions that were posted a little bit earlier now. So starting off at the top, I hope I get names right. Gajinder said, token consumption costs money. What use cases do you see, and how do you plan to fund it for a long-term basis? Also, what are the future implications? It's kind of a triple barrel question, sorry. What are the future implications? How valid is the data as it is from ALMS, and they hallucinate a lot when it comes to data and things like
Okay, yeah, a few questions there.
that?
Yeah, this started like I'm spending I don't know exactly how much, but it's like under $50 a month on this project. It's a passion project, but it is not sustainable. So I have been I'm in the last stages of accepting a physical sponsorship from a group that supports civic tech projects. So I will hopefully be able to fundraise money to both support the token usage of this project, as well as continue to develop it as an open source project that other institutions can adopt. And there's a number of institutional partners who I'm in discussions with about adopting parts of this project. So some announcements coming soon, but yeah, I'm moving this from a passion project that's just a solo developer to like having this be an open source project that has financial support, other people working with me. So yeah, that's happy that it's kind of gotten to that point, and I need to kind of like move it into a more sustainable project. Which is an important part of the like civic tech ecosystem, where if there are projects that gain traction, there are ways to sort of like move them into incubation to become a sort of more sustained project. On the question about like the data integrity, I think, and like the hallucination of data, that those are two issues that this project is trying to address in a few ways. And it's hard to like tell if something's hallucinating or if it's doing something right if you're not tracking exactly how it did something. So recording how the AI produced an analysis in a way that somebody else can inspect. So is the kind of like key tenet of this project. That is a first step towards being able to evaluate the analysis for quality, like did it hallucinate or not, or did it have a bias in the methods that it chose to use, or did it access the right data sets, or how many tokens did it use? Was it cost effective for the output that it gave? Was it worth it for the amounts of tokens that it put in? So when you run an analysis through Civic AI Tools, it tells you how many tokens it used, what models it used, and you can and the code that was generated to the deterministic code that gave the final answer. So these are all things that then become checkable and more you can evaluate them. And institutions can have one analyst analysis can be evaluated by another's. all of that framework is built so that we can kind of like answer some of these bigger questions about how do we trust analysis that's co-produced by AI or humans using AI assistants.
Great to hear that it's getting some legs too, and it might become sustainable. It's a good feeling when something like that happens. So congrats on that. Matt had a bit of a follow-up question to that, but he also, just a note for anybody who hasn't looked at the chat, Matt also posted a link to we list a whole bunch of Civic MCP servers on the guide. So there's a URL for that in the chat. But Matt's follow-up question was related. So are there any local models that are good enough to run any of these stages that you're talking through?
Probably, yes. I have not spent time experimenting with local models, although I'm very excited about the like progress that I see reported in the quality of output. I mean, generally, I see estimates of like um, when local models are like open weight models or open source models that you can download locally, so you don't have to send information to a company like Anthropic or OpenAI. And so for some types of data analysis, you might feel that it's too sensitive to be trusting one of those provider companies. If you used a local model, that could alleviate some of those concerns. And this framework doesn't have to work on the website. There's a separate repo where you can download the Civic AI tools and run it in your own environment. So you can run it in Claude Code, or if you know how to do the setup of like setting up a local model, you could use this with a local model as well. And I'm thinking about how to do some other like expand the kind of front end experience, the GUI interface, to include kind of like sandbox environments where a user might be able to select their own local model. So that's something I'm thinking about for the future. And I think there's a lot of use cases for it.
Could
Yeah,
I
go
jump in
ahead.
and ask a clarifying question regarding local models? Because I feel like that term is maybe getting a little overloaded, or I'm not fully understanding. When I think of local models and we talk about, downloading a model to run locally and purely on your own device, the primary blocker to that, as I understand it, is going to be your hardware, right? I posted this in the chat, so this is kind of my question. I apologize to like jump forward in that, but like I have no computers in my home that have the GPUs required to run a local model that is performant in any way. So when we say like local, is that specifically what you're talking about, or is there another use of the term that's a little more accessible that I'm unaware of?
So that's what I
Um,
in the
yeah.
question.
Yeah, no, that is generally what I'm talking about. And it is limited. Like you can, although it's like the barrier to entry for hardware that runs a model that can do effective work continues to go down. So like now you can run models. I don't know, don't quote me on this. It's not exact, but like if you have like $1,000 computer, you can run a model that's like a local model that's as good as the frontier models a year ago on $1,000 computer. And I expect that the trends will continue, that like the cost of hardware will keep going down and the models will keep getting better, so that like the access to that kind of local model analysis will keep going in that direction. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, that was going to be my next follow-up. Thanks, Haley. Um, uh, so the next bit I have is comes from Artem. He says he's curious about how you approach UI design. Is it done with a Claude skill? And if so, which one? Or is it in Figma or something else?
Yeah. The I will have usually I will do something like a design sprint, a design chat. Like I might do it in the web interface, and I will kind of do a stream of consciousness, like text to speech, which I highly recommend trying to get into text to speech. I use Whisper Flow, but there are other tools where I will just like kind of describe for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, like all the design principles that I'm interested in and a little bit about the project that I'm working on. And then I will say, like, do deep research on the best practices for solving these kinds of design problems and come back to me with a research report. And I'll use the deep research function in the web. And I'll do that in the web because it's a lot more expensive to do deep research on Claude Code. It takes up a lot more of your tokens if you do it there. So if you do it on web, if you have subscription, you can like get more deep access to the deep research, which spans out a bunch of planning agents that then research hundreds of websites and synthesize all that information into a research document. And then I will take that research document and I will, in a different chat, say, turn this, then I'll take that research document, go back to Claude Code and say, in my actual code base, I'll say, here's a bunch of research that I did. Can you translate this research into a design document that's tailored to my exact code base? And then that design document will be a markdown document that I will then reference in the Claude MD. And then in the next implementation chat, I'll say, whenever we're designing something, use the principles in the design document. So that's kind of how my brain works and thinks about this. Like, I think there's some of that methodology, I think, is now baked into the kind of like Claude design tool. And I haven't experimented with that yet myself, but I've heard other people who've used it, like, you can point it to a code base or to like a stream of consciousness block of your text, and it will translate it into sort of like a design document. But then whatever is produced, I'm always trying to think about, like, I want to review it, and it will get maybe sometimes it will get like 90% of it right, and I'll be like, no, that principle I don't like, and then I'll tweak it. So you want to sort of like hold on to your judgment. And to me, it's been like this process of like, in some projects, like I'll go for long stretches of like approving everything. I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. That sounds right. But then to be like, oh, wait a minute, that's actually not the direction I want to go in, either design or something else. So there's a discipline to trying to figure out, like, making sure you reserve your human judgment, and when to deploy that is important for how I do UX design and also everything else.
I noticed, Georgia's got a very niche question, she says, but because it's niche, I hope you don't mind, Georgia. If Devon's got a question, he's got his hand up, I might let him
No,
ask that
yeah,
one
yeah.
first.
My point was more like, don't bring it to the group.
Right. Well,
Nathan and I can talk.
I am if we still have time, but I hope you don't mind being bumped. But just as a general note, if we could put questions in the chat, that would be great. Devon, I will let you take the stage for a moment though to ask a question.
Thanks. Georgia, you'll be happy to know that I've produced some high quality AI slop answering your question that I'm about to send to you. But yeah, I mean, I think, this is a very impressive project. I didn't expect such a deep educational component from it, or like such a meta level analysis. And it gives me a lot of feelings. The kind of technical question I would ask, that I actually don't want you to answer because I want you to answer the second question, is how I think we've seen there's a lot of focus in Claude land, and of course then everybody else, to make it less necessary to be as specific and as process driven, I think, as you've become. That a lot of the AI research and kind of updates, like between 4.4, 4.6 and 4.8, have been making the harness more palatable for people who are not bringing such a deliberate a process that you have brought to this. So if I had a technical question, that would be if you've been kind of following that, and how you kind of gauge the necessary specificity, the effort that's useful when it comes to not just throwing stuff into the LLM and coming out. But because we have the people that we have here on this call, what I'm more interested in is your opinion on, clearly you're passionate about spreading AI tools around the civic sector. So, within the context of the Civic Tech Field Guide and the type of people who would show up to this event, what do you think the global community of civic tech, local and global community of civic tech, like how do we operationalize your demonstrated vision here of educating the people who should be educated about using AI intelligently to make things better, faster? Like you brought like a big piece of educational content here. I didn't expect the depth of the educational content here.
Yeah.
So like what is your opinion on what we all should be doing to deliver educational content and develop educational content ourselves?
Um, I think that I was early to seeing the potential impact of AI on the civic space earlier than a lot of people that I have been talking, that have been in the space, and went through like an early period of kind of being like evangelizing this and not having anything to show for it. Being like, no, but look, no, you really got to trust me. Like I made this thing. And it's like, and then like especially early on, it was like, but that thing is not that great. And it's like, but you don't understand. It's so much better than the thing I was able to make a month earlier. And I've done enough thinking about where these trends are going. And this is going to change everything. And talking, like becoming, like I spent some time like, trying to convince people to try it out and like, not getting much progress. And, internally in like with people, like trying to do that with a number of different groups of people, and I ended up getting more headway when I just demonstrated things. Where I was in a meeting once, and there was like a website where it was an internal intranet website where the filter didn't work on the website, and it took 3 months for us to get this website produced by a different internal team. And I was like, I think I could make that in an afternoon. And everyone was like, oh no, it's not going to be good. And like, I was like, well, let me just try. And so demonstrating that got me the goodwill to sort of be like, oh, I see what AI can do. Um, and this project kind of like stemmed from a number of like demonstration projects are the best education projects, is what I found with AI. But they have to actually demonstrate something useful. If you put an AI project out there that is not well designed or not solving a problem that is a real world problem, or duplicating things that have already been done, and you haven't done your homework, and you are just excited about the tool and that it can make something, then if you show that to people, it's not going to demonstrate the value. So thinking about like both building things, but building things that demonstrate value is how I think about the education, the sort of like general AI question. And then like there's a secondary thing, which is that like AI is really hard to understand and it's overwhelming because it's moving really fast. And so thinking of like every project that I'm building, I'm thinking about a literacy component about how does it progressively disclose information about itself so that other people can understand what it's doing so that they can trust it well enough.
Would it be okay to jump in with a follow-on thought? I don't want to interrupt too much.
Sorry, I was gonna, there was a follow-up question kind of from Candace. Candace hasn't asked a question yet. I don't think that I was just gonna follow. I was gonna, because it's connected directly. Candace asked, what have you experienced in terms of, this touches directly on what you were saying, but perhaps you could expand a little more in this direction. What have you experienced in terms of usage and adoption on your AI coded tools, and do people like it? Do they trust it?
Yeah, mixed. Some people are really excited, and like this was the project that kind of like demonstrated something that they vaguely thought might be possible, and then they were like really excited. So I've gotten people have reached out to me from all over the world, from like dozens of cities and state and federal governments, from people in foundations, from people in other sectors, in like science is struggling with this like verifiable information. Like AI can produce analysis now much more quickly, and we're flooded with additional artifacts. How do we trust them? So the production method at the production method attestation is like an important thing in a lot of fields right now, and people have been reaching out to me. I've had other mixed responses from people who try it out and have like a degree of expertise in sort of like a specific domain, and they've done analysis like on open data for a certain domain within open data, for example, and they get back an analysis that's not as sophisticated as they would do. And they're like, well, this isn't as good as what I could do. And the hard thing is that like if they tried it on my website, they're still using model GPT 4.0, which is like much more less capable than the more modern models, but I can't afford to like put the tokens on that website. So it's hard to kind of demonstrate like what factors you need in order to get analysis that's useful without sort of like the idea of having like reproducible artifacts that are shareable and trustable. So that's why I sort of came to this. I would show a demonstration if somebody would do something in the web tool, and they'd be like, oh, that's cute. Some people would be like, that's amazing. And some people would be like, that's cute, but not that great. And in order to answer well, why is it not that great? Like, what factors does it need to have in order to be a good analysis? That's the whole motivation behind like that kind of like evidence kind of like analysis package. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling and going off script here a little
No,
bit, but yeah.
That's perfect. We've got only a couple of minutes left, and so I just think I'll take before I give you the last question, which I'm gonna ask you to give a one sentence answer to, because it's kind of that sort of question, but it's a really, really good one. I'd just like to, I know Devin kind of put his hand up before and jumped on and had his question, and I thought I'd just take the opportunity to mention two things. First of all, speaking of MCPs, this is actually something that we are working on. And when I say we, I actually mean Devin. Devin has been like a huge part of the Civic Tech Field Guide going back for a while now, and is responsible for making basically all the technical improvements. And so he is actually working on an MCP for the guide as we speak, and we hope to have some news about that in the coming weeks. So please do stay tuned to that, because we hope that there will be a lot of people who are really keen to use all the data that we have to build useful things as well. And with that, I'm just going to go to the last question. It's from Lena, and it says, "What does Civic Tech need from AI?" In one sentence, if you can, to finish us off.
What does Civic Tech need from AI?
Maybe not exactly one sentence, but yeah.
More experimentation and willingness to experiment in a way that tries to demonstrate the value that working with these tools can bring to real civic problems.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Nathan, for doing this for us. It's been really, really like was said several times already, like really educational as well as interesting. And to everybody else, thank you so much for showing up. It's great to have so many people here. This is something that we hope to do again because of exactly what was just mentioned. There is a lot of experimentation going on, and it's probably going to increase by an order of magnitude, which is a mixed bag, as we touched on right at the beginning, right? But there's a lot of really, really useful stuff being produced, and we hope to bring that to the forefront. So please stay tuned for more show and tell events. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'll put the presentation on my website so that others can find it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. See you later. Have a great day, evening, wherever you are.
Wow. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.